Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents. How are you doing this evening? My name is David. I am the Malcontent, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. Today is Monday, March 29th, 2021, and let me pull in my amazing co-host. Jennifer, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm being a well-behaved young lady this evening. In case you didn't see my earlier.
You're forcing me off the dressing. I know lots of people will go, what happened to the purple polo? So the purple polo's back. And people here might be seeing, Jennifer, can you see over my shoulder here?
Yes.
We've got Yoda. So if you weren't on our Facebook page, on Saturday, I finally got the gumption up to go ahead and start packing up Yoda's stuff. And in the middle of packing Yoda's stuff, a box showed up from one of our malcontents. And I didn't expect this at all, literally in the middle of packing his things. And Dr. and Mrs. Malcontent gets a hell of a lot more packages than me, and I didn't expect to package. Anyway, that's an amazing pillow back there behind me. And so thank you so much. The timing of its arrival seriously could not have been better. And it has a place of honor in the studio. And so there is Yoda metaphorically looking over my shoulder. So once again, thank you.
Aw.
Jennifer,
sweet.
Are we ready to do the land acknowledgement and then kind of start diving into things?
Let's do it. Malcontent News comes to you from Seattle, Washington, the occupied homelands of Coast Salish peoples. We are grateful to live and work as guests on these lands, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Duquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot Nation. This land acknowledgement is but one small gesture in the ongoing process of working toward repairing and sustaining relations with Coast Salish lands, waters, peoples, and their other than human kin.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that. Chauvin trial opened up today in Minneapolis. They have found the jurors. They had their first day of testimony. We will be doing some coverage on it, but Jennifer, as you know, we have a packed show tonight. And so I thought we could just kind of open to talk about some key points on that and unpack that a little bit. So Jerry Blackwell, who is on the prosecution, opened with the statement that Chauvin betrayed this badge. There was a picture of the badge for Minneapolis police up there as he said this, when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of George Floyd. A lot of people were wondering, Jennifer, where the video, this infamous video of 9 minutes and 29 seconds is the entire length of it would play. It was played in its entirety for the jurors as part of opening arguments, including George Floyd's progressively gasping less and less 27 times, "I can't breathe."
Oh, wow. That's a riveting piece of evidence right there, huh? Pretty compelling.
Defense attorneys, Jennifer, are focusing on his prior health issues and his drug use as part of opening arguments. Another thing that they're arguing in their opening arguments was they're trying to blame the gathering crowd as they were pleading for Chauvin to stop and getting progressively more assertive in that, saying that they were a distraction to the officers in their attempt to provide Floyd with care and became a threat to them.
That's garbage. Absolute garbage. That whole defense is garbage. Bringing up prior health issues is garbage. Doing the stereotypical all Black people are on drugs bullshit is garbage. And then saying that the crowd distracted the police from administering him care and they're a threat. Why? Because they were calling on them to stop, to actually administer care to this individual that they were harming. That was, saying "I can't breathe" repeatedly. What a weak defense. An absolutely weak defense. And I would say that, this should be an open and shut case, but we know it won't be, and we know why.
Yeah, we do. 911 operator testified also that during the call, as 911 calls were starting to flood in, they felt it was something was awry and notified their supervisor that something seemed to be wrong with the call and the officer's conduct.
So you have the fact that this man is saying "I can't breathe" 27 times. You have a crowd gathering trying to get Chauvin to stop doing what he's doing and essentially murdering this man. And then you have concerned 911 operators who are concerned about what's happening and police conduct. Okay.
Yeah, basically. Other thing that came up in the trial today, the medical examiner did extensive testimony. He indicated that for some people, the amount of drugs in the entire cocktail in Floyd's system would be fatal. But he also said that wouldn't be relevant, with prosecutors arguing deaths like this, meaning from overdoses, don't happen with someone screaming for their life for 7 minutes.
What words can you even say to do that statement justice? There aren't any.
Yeah, so this was the first day of testimony. They were going to call a third witness today, but they couldn't get the Zoom meeting to work. So they recessed early. That's why I'm like,
yeah,
could hire me, guys. I do it for a living. Anyway, they couldn't get the Zoom meeting to work, so they called it early. They're going to bring in the third witness tomorrow. And that's kind of our update with the Chauvin trial. I did not have chance between real work and preparing for the show to watch even 1 second of it. So I'm only going by the summary of notes, Jennifer, that was provided to me. So I don't know reactions, or anything like that to kind of sit there and go, well, it seems like points here and not points there. So anyway, that's what happened in the Chauvin trial today.
I haven't seen much about it either. I was busy too.
This is the part of the show where I want to tell everybody that I want you to go ahead and spam those hearts. Spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins and researchers and field producers and editors know that you appreciate all of the hard work that they do. It also messes with the Facebook algorithm. Here is something that is really important because we're getting more and more followers on Periscope and Twitter. And I have bad news for you. Periscope is going away. It's not anything that we're doing. Twitter had announced almost a year ago that they are shutting down the service. Tonight will be our last show on Periscope. So you can go ahead and follow us on YouTube if you want to go ahead and watch over there at Malcontentment Tango. You can also go ahead and watch us on Facebook. That's Facebook at Malcontentment. And here we go. Let's see if I can hit the right button here. You can, oh, look at that, Jennifer. I did it. You can also watch us on Twitch, which is Malcontentment Tango on Twitch. You can also just remember this. It's real easy. Malcontentnews.tv. Malcontentnews.tv take you right to our Twitch channel. So if you're watching us on Periscope or Twitter, you're going to have to find a new avenue to watch us as of tonight. Tonight is our last show on Periscope.
Yes, and I'm really proud of you. You've gotten the buttons right like the last 2 or 3 shows.
Well, once again, like this for the it's literally just a keyboard. It's unlabeled, so it is definitely challenging to kind of remember what button goes where. But I think I finally have the QWERTY UIO. Those are all of our different channels across there. So U is the website. Malcontentnews.com. And on the subject of website, Jennifer, let's go ahead and dive into our first story, our true first story. Our first story takes us to both Marysville and Kirkland, Washington. On our website, we covered Marysville last week. There's a story that went to press at 7:55 tonight, so you can go and read it after the show, not right now, but you can go ahead and read it after the show, and you can actually read that at malcontentnews.com. And in that story, we've highlighted the 2 incidents that are going on in Marysville and Kirkland. And we met with Dr. Janice Green, who is the president of the NAACP in Snohomish County. We had a great conversation with her about what is going on in Marysville. To summarize real quickly, and then we'll go into Dr. Green's interview, in Marysville back in December, in a Zoom meeting where students were together for a leadership club, some white students basically were making a hit list, making death threats to black students and going through a list of going, we're going to kill this student, we're not going to kill that student, yeah, let's kill that student. And there were black students on the call. After that meeting, 2 students were disciplined. They received school suspensions and they were moved to a different high school. That wasn't enough, because what happened next was a more sinister threat on Snapchat involving a white hand holding a pistol being sent from the same Snapchat account of one of the juveniles involved in the December incident, with the caption, "Ready to kill minorities." If you're not familiar with Marysville Pilchuck High School, Marysville Pilchuck High School was the scene of a mass shooting back in 2014. It ended up with 5 students dead. It was also the scene in 2018 of a brawl that required a very large police presence and the school being put on lockdown and then shut down early at 12:45 p.m. The massacre in the cafeteria in 2014 was so bad, Marysville Pilchuck High School had to build a new cafeteria. And with that, Jennifer, and that kind of explanation, we're going to go ahead and roll our interview with Dr. Green, and then we're also going to talk about what's going on in Kirkland. Dr. Janice Green of the NAACP of Snohomish County, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're talking to you today about this ongoing incident that's happened at Marysville Pilchuck High School. Could you give us a little bit of background on that story?
In December, there was a student in the leadership forum class that they started discussing killing Black people. And they had names of people that they planned on killing. And then they said, well, we're going to kill these ones. Yes, these ones. Yes. Well, not this one. It was a Zoom meeting. The teacher, I believe, wasn't in there that came back. And actually, it was reported.
The situation wasn't rectified after that. The situation continued to escalate, and there's now a number of people involved, and with what we understand, additional threats.
A couple of months later, there's a young man with a hand on the gun saying, killing minorities soon. And one of the students actually took that Snapchat, took a screenshot of the Snapchat, said that she was afraid and wanted it taken care of. It was not taken care of. They're saying that it wasn't that child's fault, that he didn't do that another person who's 20 years old took that photo on his account. And then it comes out later that person with the hand on the gun that said killing minorities soon is a 20-year-old son of a police officer. So it gets deeper and deeper as we move through.
Just to clarify, when you say it's not a 20-year-old police officer, but a relative of a city of Marysville police officer?
That's what they say. They say it's a relative of a city of Marysville police officer. And the reason that they're not investigating in Marysville is that there would be a conflict of interest. So they turned it over to the sheriff's office.
Marysville Pilchuck High School is no stranger to gun violence.
They had a shooting sometime back, a little while back, a few years back. They have a heightened awareness, or should have a heightened awareness of what can happen with young people and guns in schools and school shootings. So they've had one. I think that they are concerned, and I've heard them voice the concern. But for somehow or the other, they said they took this young man through a threat assessment and found that they didn't consider him a threat.
Dr. Green, it seems in this day and age where a 20-year-old would have grown up going through active school shooter drills through their entire educational experience, seeing the headlines of everything that goes on in this country, and being an adult would understand the significance of a Snapchat holding a gun saying, going to kill minorities soon.
Here you have our kids getting ready to go back to school. They're going to be face to face. You've got people threatening their lives, and doesn't seem to be anything happening immediately. Now, when you ask about the investigation will be finished sometime in April. But you're sending our kids back into school with threats hanging in the air, with people not being held accountable, with the people not having to deal with the consequences of their behavior. And so what message are you sending to them? That their lives are just not that important, or you don't care that much? I would be very concerned about sending my children to school with those type of death threats hanging in the air.
What does the NAACP of Snohomish County want to have happen out of this incident?
And we would like to see appropriate charges, appropriate action for the for the young people that made the threat, for the 20-year-old that was holding the gun. We want to have that happen. We also want to hold the school district accountable. We'd also like to, for the entire Snohomish County, look at putting some type of oversight so that we can see what's going on outside of the school districts. So you have a community type oversight so we can address these issues when they come up. This isn't the only thing that's happening. Children of color are going to school. They don't feel protected. And how do you learn in that environment? And I'm going to say Marysville right now is at the crux of it, but they're not the only ones. And so I would be remiss if I just blamed them. But this is a place where we can learn how to handle this type of action. And one of the things that I really am concerned about is that we keep pulling our young people that are traumatized, racially traumatized, and we want them to come out in front of people that really don't care that much. Otherwise, they would have done something and tell their stories over and over again. So we want to re-traumatize our children. And then we have people that want to hear those stories, but then they're not really taking the necessary action. So that's one of the things that we want to make sure happens. But, this time we're not going to forget, and we're not going to let it go, and we're going to stay right here.
Dr. Janice Green, thank you so much for joining us. Great conversation about a difficult topic, Jennifer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And she makes some really great points about, concern for the safety of these children returning to school with nothing being done about these threats, no consequences for these actions.
One of the things that she said in that interview was that Marysville, of course, is not exclusive with this, which provides this great segue
Yeah.
for what's going on in Kirkland. So in Kirkland, there was a racial incident that happened last year, right at the start of the year, involving a black student, a female white student, and either a faculty member or a security guard. We're working on kind of sorting that out. And the Lake Washington School District has been very, very tight-lipped on that story. In that incident, the black student was called the N-word. When this faculty member, or in an escalating event that was just beyond the racial slur, when this faculty member or security guard got there, the black student was also called the N-word. At the end of the day, the black student was the one who was punished. There is no information on were there any consequences for the faculty member or the female student, and COVID hit. And so this story and what's happened is the story has reemerged as high school students are getting ready to go back to school.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's a particularly dangerous time right now because students have been outside of the classroom for so long and allowed to behave in various ways. I mean, that particular story, of course, it's swept under the rug because COVID hits, and now it's resurfacing because people really need to be concerned and have legitimate concerns about sending their children back to school in this climate, this extremely hostile climate. I mean, I was talked a little bit about last week about there being a similar incident at the high school my daughter attends, Roosevelt. We've seen that there's a lack of consequences for what's occurred at Marysville Pilchuck. And I think one of the things that she brought up that was very interesting is that the 20-year-old that supposedly took the Snapchat or was on his account or whatever is actually the son of a police officer. So these are very troubling things. And, when there's not any consequences, how are BIPOC children supposed to feel safe in school when they know that these people that are making these kinds of threats and harassment and, very kind of racist remarks, not kind of actual racist remarks, are not going to be receiving punishment for their actions.
Well, you've brought up a really good point. In the last COVID hit, then you had the death of George Floyd. You had the equivalent of the Long Hot Summer Part 2. 1968 was the Long Hot Summer, for people who aren't familiar where that phrase comes from. 2020 was Long Hot Summer Part 2. But everybody was in their respective corners, so to speak, and interacting in a tighter and tighter circle and a more polarized circle. My concern is that there has not been a reckoning and a rationalization. And here in Washington State, we are 21 days away of putting them all back together in classrooms. And they have been around their collective dinner tables, either talking about Black Lives Matter, equality, LGBTQIA issues, death of George Floyd. And at the other table, they're talking about overthrowing the government.
Exactly. It's a very, they're going to come back. Kids are going to come back with, they're so easily influenced. I mean, kids my children's age, my kids are 14 and 17. They're so impressionable and, still developing in their ideas. And so if you have, people at home or people who are constantly in their circle, continuously preaching hate and racism and transphobia and these things, these are the ideas that they're going to carry back with them when they return to school. And that's going to be reflected in the way that they behave towards people who they believe fit those particular stereotypes. And that's a very dangerous situation.
It is a very dangerous situation. One of our commenters, Kimberly, brought up, has anybody even considered that teenagers now have grown up going through school shooter drills. So they know the tactics that are going to be employed to protect faculty, students, and teachers and police response. So at what point do we see a smarter mass shooter? Because the next school shooting is not a if, it's a when.
Exactly. My kids are not returning to brick and mortar school this year. I've elected to keep them out for the rest of the year. They're doing online schooling for various reasons, but I think this is going to be a very difficult transition back to this kind of brick and mortar, see everybody environment that children have been out of for so long.
Well, we will continue to monitor the situation. We will continue to monitor the situation in Kirkland. There is a story that is up on our website. That's at malcontentnews.com. Story went live before the show. Don't go run there yet. Stick around for the rest of the show. Then you can go ahead and run over there. Jennifer, I think we're ready for the next story.
Okay.
Jennifer, you're bringing us this story tonight about the passing of these pernicious, I'm going to use Alex from MSNBC's word, because when you provided that clip for us to run on the show and she dropped pernicious, I was like, ooh, that's a gorgeous $10 word. This pernicious legislation that's been passed in Georgia.
Yeah, so this occurs a few days ago, and I just want to preface it, like when we're talking about Jim Crow was a very dark period in history that was ushered in after the 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson ruling, where they basically said separate but equal. It doesn't violate civil rights to segregate people by race. And so this ushered in this very dark period of history where segregation became the norm, but also as part of that was very explicit tactics for Black voter disenfranchisement. And so this is why people are very much concerned that this is a second coming of Jim Crow. So what happened is, Georgia governor, the devil in Georgia, however you want to call it, Brian Kemp, passes this 90-plus page omnibus bill called SB 202, and it limits mail-in voting, makes it illegal to give people waiting in line to vote food or water, normal portable polling sites, unlimited challenges to voter registration. Voters must have a driver's license or state ID to vote in person, or a photocopy to vote via mail. And the list goes on, and it has been denounced by multiple people as racially targeted. But we have some clips, and my concern with this, that these very blatant things, the no food and water, the no polling sites, are meant to distract from some of the bigger things that are occurring in this bill that they talk about in the clips that we have.
This new Georgia election law, we focus a lot on the public-facing things, like you can't give people food and water when they're waiting in line for 8 hours. The absentee early voting is being curtailed. But there are deeply pernicious things happening behind the scenes in the election machinery for the state. Among them, removing the Secretary of State from the state election board chair, allowing the state election board to delay certification, allowing the state election board to replace local election officials. When you read those, what runs through your mind?
Well, Alex, it makes me angry. It makes me angry to hear that conversation that you just played between the former president and the Secretary of State. It makes me angry that we have elected officials who seem to want to just suck up to the former president as opposed to following the law, that they'd rather disenfranchise voters than allow their voices to be heard. So I'm angry. And I will tell you, I'm the Pennsylvania Attorney General. We're talking about this matter in Georgia, and I think it's important that we are, because this can happen anywhere.
Yeah, so this is some very alarming stuff. And the thing about it is that it just allows them to remove officials, state officials, at their discretion. And so it's very problematic. And the problem is that other states are starting to propose similar similar kinds of bills. And I just want to give a big shout out to Lisa for, I was very busy today doing grades and stuff, and she sent me some information that was super, super helpful. So thank you, Lisa. So these voter restrictive laws are also being proposed in many states in addition to those already passed in Georgia, including key swing states that during the 2020 election are like proposing restrictions on access to make absentee voting and other changes that will make it more difficult for their citizens to make it to the polls. And by citizens, you know which particular demographics we're talking about. There's a lot of speculation. It's not necessarily speculation, but a lot of expressed concern by multiple people and organizations that this is going to disproportionately affect people of color, in particular Black people who are going to vote. And I know we have some additional clips on this, David.
It's the new election law that many tonight are calling racist, signed by the same Georgia governor who refused to go along with the wildest rumors of widespread fraud in the last two elections where the Democrats won. And here's what he's saying now.
There's no doubt there were many alarming issues with how the election was handled.
There are now two photos defining this pivotal moment, one with the white Republican men signing the law, and another with a lone Black woman getting arrested for trying to get in the room. State Representative Park Cannon is a Democrat, and she was put in jail after she refused to stop knocking on the governor's door.
There is no reason for me to be arrested. I am a legislator. Do not touch me.
U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock is the pastor of her church and was at the jail when they bailed her out.
What we have witnessed today is a desperate attempt to lock out and squeeze the people out of their own democracy.
Senator Warnock, I think, nails it in the last few seconds of that last clip.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also you have Reverend Jamal Bryan of Georgia, who basically said, quote, you're going to see a whole lot of first-time voters, younger voters, and disillusioned and disenfranchised voters heading back to the polls because they realize what's at stake, but they have to be able to vote, with the, basically massive restrictions in place. It's going to be more difficult for people to vote. And here you have a Black female representative being arrested for simply knocking on the door and wanting to witness that being signed into law. How is that not reflective of people's concerns about this being a racially targeted law? But again, my bigger concern is that people are going to be so focused on these things, which they should be, that they think that are going to particularly disenfranchise Black voters, that they're overlooking the fact that they're basically, we can, do away with whatever we want to skew the votes in our favor because of the way these laws are set up. So in addition to Georgia, we have Florida, Arizona, and Texas who are working on similar laws. And Pennsylvania, North Dakota, and Oklahoma are all seeking to eliminate no excuse absentee voting. So these are big changes they're seeking to make to the ways in which people can vote.
There's three things that jump to mind for me here. Number one, these very actions disenfranchise military voters and military families. That's the first thing that jumps out of my mind. The second thing that jumps out of my mind, it is now easier to buy a gun in Georgia because you could do a direct purchase with no background check, the gun show loophole, than it is to vote. The third thing that jumps out at me is whenever lawmakers sign a law in a clandestine way, any rational person should then go, something is afoot and it is not good.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing, if you're not willing to stand behind what you're signing into law and let people witness that, you're doing something shady. And he knows that, after what happened in Georgia and the way that it flipped, but also it's so ironic given the way in which he kind of, he pushed back against the Trump voter election fraud and that phone call. And then here he is signing this completely egregious law in place that fundamentally restricts the ways in which people can vote.
Yeah, something that jumps out at me, if we use Texas as an example, Texas has gone through thousands upon thousands of manpower hours, people power hours, and spent over $1 million looking for voter fraud in 2020. The voter fraud that they found, where the ballots actually slipped through the crack, you could count on both hands with fingers left over. And the ballots that they intercepted before they went out were almost all exclusively, it was like 98% to 2% Republican ballots.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I don't understand how they think that this is going to stick, that they're going to be able to do this. But I think there's such a desperation by the Republican Party, and particularly older white men, to stay in power because they're so afraid of that slipping out of their hands and into the hands of people of color who have been historically mistreated by white people for hundreds of years. And they have a fear that they're going to be treated as poorly as they've treated other people, and they can't allow that to happen.
And they're fighting against a losing tide, and that is why they're trying to grip closer and closer. And the line from Princess Leia in the 4th episode of the Star Wars movies comes to mind: the tighter that you make your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems flow through your fingers. Jennifer, we have a little bit of a clip. It is from Brian Kemp's team for his re-election campaign and what his platform is going to be. I'd like to go ahead and play that.
Oh, please do.
You've got to talk him off his platform now. Death to America? He's clearly not pro-life.
You can tell that to the polls. The people love him.
Death to Edgar Bennett of Watkinsville, who has to work 2 jobs to pay for heating oil. Death to Bobby Ellerby of Winder.
He's a widower, too, so he gets the sympathy vote. Ever since Lil's tragic passing.
I was there early. I saw the carnage.
Oh, here comes the spin now.
Death to high taxes. Death to big government. Death to America. Do you want to go that way?
Jennifer, what jumps out at me on that clip is from 2009. Did this, in some terrifying way, predict the future, like, to perfection?
I don't know. I mean, like, after what happened with The Simpsons and Donald Trump, I'm not going to say no.
Jennifer, we will definitely keep our eye, because there's an effort in Washington State to do away with universal mail-in voting and make it harder to vote here. The reality is there's a cynical attempt. It's really not going to move the needle because of the way that the demographics and the politics are set up in this state. But it is an attempt from people who claim that they cherish individual rights and freedoms, who are trying to do away with individual rights and freedoms. Thank you for bringing us the story tonight. Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. And for as little as $5 a month, you can help continue to bring independent journalism and interviews like we had with Dr. Green tonight, and interviews like last week that we had with Dr. Fauci, and the exclusive video that we had last week of the carjacker driving through the protest. All of that is possible because of you. And for our higher level malcontents, one of the perks of being a patron is you get once a month a behind the scenes session with me, the malcontent, where we go 1 hour in studios. It is basically an AMA, no hold bar. And on this particular AMA, which is coming up on Wednesday at 8 p.m., but you have to be a patron to be on board for that, we're actually going to do a walkthrough through the studio and show all of the technology that's going to be going here. So an exclusive behind the scenes look of everything there's around here. And the crew saw all the pictures because I went through and reorganized everything to get ready for Wednesday because it was a disaster in here. And the crew can tell you it's a much bigger room than you think. And there's a lot more stuff in here than you think.
That is very true. Very true.
And the other thing I'd like to do is go ahead and spam those hearts. We're kind of coming into the bottom of the hour and going up the other side. Let those mods and admins know that you appreciate all the hard work that they do, along with our researcher Boomer, our editors Rashi, our community director Ty, and well as our field producers and writers. They work very, very hard to bring the news to you. Back in January, we ran a story, or beginning of February, we ran a story of a terrible event that happened with a 9-year-old child in Rochester, New York. And we have been following that story as more video has come out and showing as you peel that onion that story gets worse. This story actually broke in January of 2020, but the body cam video was just released as part of an ongoing lawsuit. And if anything, it seems like the police in Montgomery County, Maryland, have said, hold my beer and watch this. Because this body cam video involves a 5-year-old child. Jennifer, there's no words.
No, it is one of the most disgusting things I've seen in some time. I was like, I think I probably said a few things I shouldn't have when I was watching the video prior to the show. Expletives, of course. But I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Who does this to a 5-year-old child? Like, excuse my language. I'm not the most people-friendly person, but I will defend to the death children and animals. So, yeah.
With that, the body cam video that were released was 55 minutes. Obviously, we're not going to show all 55 minutes. We did post it on our Facebook page over the weekend. We did a summary video on our TikTok. Let's see if I get it right, Jennifer.
Man,
we did a summary video on our TikTok, and we're going to be showing the video here. This video is 2 minutes and 5 seconds long. I thought the video of the 9-year-old was hard to edit. I'm just giving you the warning. I was literally physically ill after I did the editing on this video. Remember, I had to watch all 55 minutes to kind of find the 2 minutes and 5 second salient pieces and do it in a way that tells the story and doesn't push a narrative. And with that, we're going to go ahead and roll the clip. If you don't want to watch it, come back in 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
How old are you?
5.
5. You feel like you can make your own decisions? Huh? You gotta ride.
3.
Come on. Cut it out. Hey, cut it out. Cut it out.
I'm riding with you. We're going back to school.
Lincoln.
Get in. Now. I'm not asking. Get in the car.
I'm going with you. Let's go.
Oh, we're gonna have problems. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't want to hear it. I still don't want to hear it. You better stop. Know what? Sit down.
2008 Cadillac.
Sit down.
Shut that noise up. Shut that noise up.
Ain't nobody listening.
Oh. How you doing?
Hey, Miss Grant.
Okay. One of the officers made a statement and asked what's going on in my home.
Yes, ma'am. If you want, we can talk about that.
So we can
away
talk
from
about
now.
it here. I would just
Okay.
want to show y'all. Come on, Doodle. Stand up for mommy. This is 16 years later. I have a 22-year-old at home. So this one is spoiled. I can't discipline him because the government won't allow you.
Yes, you can.
I spank him, but I can't discipline him how I want to discipline him because of this. I'm not losing my child to the system, and I'm not going to prison.
Okay, can you
So I just
clarify
wanted
how
to
you
show
would
y'all.
like to discipline?
It's not being physically abused.
Who said he was?
No,
Because-
we believe it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, we want you to beat him. You don't go to prison for beating your child.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
You don't go to prison for beating your child. That is the official position, apparently, Jennifer, of the Montgomery County Police Department of Silver Springs, Maryland, when dealing with a 5-year-old. There is so much to fucking
Watch the F-bombs. This is
unpack
This is
here.
written. This is
And
written.
we do have to be sensitive of time on the show.
Well, no, it's absolutely disgusting all the way around. I mean, there's so much going on there. The way in which the police officer, who is assumed the one that's interacting with the child at the beginning of the video, responds to the child, and they're being upset because obviously they're 5. They don't understand what the fuck is going on. Excuse my language. But then you don't go to, we want you to beat your child. What?
The other thing that jumps out at me there is that the mother, who is black, immediately comes in that room thinking that she is being accused of child abuse, which just goes into the psyche of Black America when they're getting a phone call about the police are here with your child and we want to talk to you.
Yeah. She's like taking off her shirt, going, look, see, no marks, no nothing. Beat your child. We want you to beat your child. You will go to jail. What the fuck?
Mom isn't fully innocent in here because part of what brings this conversation in is that mom starts saying that, well, I do spank my child. I just can't discipline my child the way I want to because I'm not going to let him be a victim of the system and I'm not going to prison. And they're like, oh, that's not going to happen.
Okay. A couple of things. Perhaps she's concerned that they don't think that she disciplines the child. And so she's trying to make the point that she does. I'm not saying that she's innocent here, but there could be a variety of reasons for the reason, variety of reasons she responded in this particular way. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is so alarming here, but I think we need to not direct our attention to that particular, but the way in which the police responded to a misbehaving 5-year-old child.
They handcuffed him. They threatened to beat him multiple times. These are people that this child has been taught are there to help him in crisis. The video that we made for TikTok is 45 seconds long, Jennifer, and the title that we gave it was Generational Trauma in 45 Seconds.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. And there's been so many studies and books and things written about the impacts of intergenerational trauma on people of color, on Black people, on Indigenous people, the ways in which colonialism, police brutality, state violence impact generations of people, slavery, the ways in which this impacts generations of people. And so if people wonder why didn't they just stop when or why did they resist arrest? This is why people grow up fearing the cops. This is why they resist arrest, because they treat them like this. This is a 5-year-old child. He was treated like an adult man.
Treated like an adult man. And this, once again, is a magnificent example for defunding the police. Oh, there goes the malcontent again. He getting all communist socialist on us with the defund the police. I am not an abolitionist. Defund does not mean abolition. There was no reason for armed police officers with handcuffs, guns, batons, and tasers to respond to a 5-year-old child. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond my level of comprehension why anything involving a 5-year-old that, is about their behavior would require that level of response.
I can't believe I'm going to cite my ex-wife on this show. My ex-wife was a director of a school in another life. If she lost a 5-year-old child, she would have been fired. Is this where we're at in our society, that nobody is questioning the administration of the school and how they misplaced a 5-year-old child? How did a 5-year-old child walk out of the building in the first place?
Yeah, so this isn't uncommon. My son had behavioral issues in 3rd grade, used to take off from school as a way in which to escape. Do you know how many times they called me and told me what had happened? 0. 0 times. I had to hear it from him. So let's talk about public school in America. And this is a little white boy. Imagine what happens to children of color.
The other thing, and then we'll move on with this, Jennifer, where I just wanted to throw up, and I had like some gallows humor, laughter to it, is when the female officer's less compassionate than the male officer, which blows my mind. And she starts screaming in the face of this crying 5-year-old child that isn't her kid. One, if that was my kid, I would want to destroy her. Number 2, I'll admit it right here. I've done that to one of my kids. It doesn't work. It makes things a lot worse. And you know what happens about 2 or 3 hours after you've got reached and you've done that to your kid? You feel like a human bag of shit, and you can never take it back.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I always feel like, when you get stressed out, I'm a single parent. I work a lot. And so sometimes, like my 14-year-old, I snapped at him this morning about something I thought he took that he didn't. And I felt so bad about it after the fact. How you can get into the face of a 5-year-old child and scream at them. Doesn't she say something to the effect of stop making that fucking noise or shut that noise up, something to that effect? Do these people did they procreate? That's concerning. I mean, are they allowed to be around children unsupervised? They are. They shouldn't be, because they're not good people.
If any rational person saw an adult treating a child like that in a store, in a park, in the movie theater, in a parking lot, any rational adult would just be at the minimum, would be ew.
Yeah. Yeah. Not these people. That's what we want to call them.
I've been seeing in the comments this can't be reformed. And I think that this is just an example that screams for defund. There was no reason for armed police officers. This should have been handled at the school level.
Yeah.
The school should have had a resource that, I don't know, is trained in juvenile mental health and knows how to negotiate with a 5-year-old, because it definitely takes a special skill set, as any parent who has dealt with an out-of-control 5-year-old can tell you. It requires special skills to negotiate with a 5-year-old. And all those 2 police officers did was just like, how could we more?
How can we give this kid PTSD?
And congratulations, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
All right, malcontents, take a deep breath. We're going to lift you up. We have a good news story. Yeah. And I know that this is a tough one, so people are going to... We've set this up this way on purpose in the show notes. I want you to go ahead and spam those hearts. Go ahead and let the mods and admins know that you appreciate what they're doing. They got rid of the spam bot that had the big, huge message about how you can have your herpes cured. You can't get your herpes cured. Don't listen to the spam bot. So our mods and admins were dealing with that while watching the trauma and listening to us rant. So go ahead and spam those hearts. The other thing I would like to remind you, if you are watching us tonight on Periscope or Twitter, and we know we have a growing audience over there, tonight is the last night. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with Twitter, which is shutting down the Periscope service. You can watch us on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Malcontentment Tango, or you can do a search for Malcontentment News. You can go ahead and watch us on Twitch. You can find us on Malcontentment Tango if you go on Twitch. Another way to really easily to remember Twitch, malcontentnews.tv. And Jennifer, it looks like we got a lot of people on Twitch tonight. And the last one is Facebook at Malcontentment. Those are the 3 channels that you can watch us on. So if you are watching us tonight on Twitter or Periscope, remember, you got to find us on another channel, because you're not going to find us on Thursday.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest is located in Shoreline, Washington. I'm laughing because of one of the comments. It's located in Shoreline, Washington on Highway 99 between 170th and 180th. They're on the west side of the highway. I always tell people, check their website or Facebook page for their hours because they wiggle a little bit. They have amazing coffee from Africa. They have amazing merch. They will make you almost anything that you can imagine. And don't forget to get the potato scone. The potato scone is like the perfect scone of the universe. Had a baby with a baked potato with cheese and chives. It is just one of the most amazing things you can put in your mouth. And Jennifer, I know you do not partake because you're a vegan.
Somebody must have said something in the comments about the potato scone, huh?
The comments are blowing up. Get a potato scone. Jennifer, you're gonna lift the mood for us. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. So anybody who knows me knows that I love UFC. Of course, I know UFC is extremely problematic. Dana White is terrible. Conor McGregor, whatever. But I love the actual sport. And so this weekend was UFC 260, which was Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title. So we now have a new undisputed heavyweight champion in Francis Ngannou. I think I'll let you roll that clip, David, before I delve into the story a little bit more.
For a professional MMA fighter, Ngannou started training at a very late age. Born and raised in Badi, Cameroon, Ngannou grew up in very poor conditions. With very little formal education, Ngannou started work at the age of 12. The area of Cameroon that he was born in was known for its sand quarries, and this is where he worked to help support his family. On top of doing physical labor from a young age, Francis's father was a well-known street fighter in the area, and he used this as motivation. Avoiding routes that would lead to joining gangs, Francis vowed to do something positive with his life and started training in boxing at the age of 22. After helping to support his family by taking any jobs available, Ngannou decided to move to France at the age of 26 to try and pursue his boxing dream. Though his dream was held back by 2 months in jail after he illegally crossed the border in Spain, Ngannou finally made his way to Paris with no money and no one there that he knew. After walking around on the streets trying to find a boxing gym, he found one that let him in and gave him $50 to buy some basic training clothes. Though boxing was his first love, the guys at the gym convinced him to try MMA since it would be easier for him to make money. Since the gym was closed on weekends, Ngannou would normally spend his remaining time at any available homeless shelters. Soon enough, he found another gym where he would meet his longtime head coach, Fernand Lopez.
It's quite the story, Jennifer, and I'm watching the comments just go brrr by. I'm feeling like I'm the only person in the Malcontentment kingdom that doesn't watch this. There's like a ton of comments.
It's my religion. I watch it faithfully every Saturday. So what's really interesting about Ngannou is he's only been fighting with the UFC for about 5 years. So what happened, as you know, the video shows, he grew up in Bati, Cameroon, in Africa. He grew up very poor. His parents divorced at the age of 6. He went to live with a relative. And so in order to avoid getting into local gangs, he actually went to work in a sand mine around the age of 12. Always loved boxing, wanted to go professional, always wanted to emigrate so he could be a professional boxer like his idol, Mike Tyson. His dad also fought, was a street fighter, but he got really ill for a while, and so that kind of stopped. But then he decided around 2012, 2013, he was going to make a go of it. So what happens is extremely amazing. It took him between, I think it was 12 or 14 tries to actually get out of Cameroon. They kept catching him and bringing him back. He was left in the Sahara Desert to die a few times. So he finally makes it to Spain, where he's imprisoned for 2 months. After that, he makes his way to Paris. And then he's broke, no friends, no family, sleeping in a parking garage. He is living in and out of homeless shelters, sleeping in what they call a car park with only a sleeping bag. He finally, he volunteers in a homeless shelter, actually chopping vegetables. And so he meets this man who takes a real big liking to him and introduces him to some people at a gym. And so these people at this gym realize, that he's extremely talented. And so they gave him a little bit of money to get some, gear so he could practice. But even during this time when he's homeless and he's broke, he's still finding ways to get money and send them back to his family in Cameroon. So he's a really upstanding guy. He gets invited to the UFC Institute in 2017. They're like, wow, this guy is actually, he's absolutely amazing. He actually lost his first fight with Stipe Miocic in January of 2018. Put a lot of work in to come back and defeat him in the second round this time. What's particularly interesting about him, though, and just to give you an idea of how strong he is, for a while he held the world record for the strongest punch, and analysts estimate his punches generate around 33 horsepower, or 93 horsepower each. So that's what it feels like to get hit by Francis Ngannou. Like 93 horses are hitting you. That's a lot of pressure.
Yikes.
And he's only 24.
So who did he beat?
Stipe Miocic. He was the previous heavyweight champion. And he defended that title prior to that against Daniel Cormier. But these two had fought in January of 2018, and it was a pretty decisive victory for Stipe at that time. And so Francis put in a lot of work, especially on his grappling game, and came back and put on a really strong performance. He didn't win it via submission. It was a TKO in the second round, but it was extremely impressive.
Jennifer, a question came up in the chat. There's actually, it's just going, brrr. This is like people are on this topic. There was a question about brain injuries. Are they scanning for CTE for the fighters? And what is the position of the league on things like traumatic brain injury?
That is something I'm not entirely aware of if they're doing that kind of stuff. I imagine, this is going to become just like football and boxing. This is going to become a significant issue within the mixed martial arts community, Bellator, UFC, and other mixed martial arts organizations and programs. Because they do, of course, they take a lot of head punches. They're also, getting choked out. All kinds of things that are extremely hard on their bodies. So I'm not aware of the current position of the UFC on this kind of stuff, but it's something that I could look into and report back on.
Another comment that came up is that over in the comments is that there's going to be an MMA fighter that is going to be an expert witness tomorrow in the Chauvin trial.
Really? That's interesting.
Yes, they are going to be discussing how dangerous the hold and the maneuver that the police officers and Officer Chauvin used against George Floyd. That's
amazing. And yeah, they spend hours and hours a day. Some of these guys are, purple, brown, black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mixed martial arts is just that. Some of them have multiple higher level belts and, Muay Thai, all kinds of other, Jiu-Jitsu. I can't think of other ones off the top of my head at the moment because I got really excited and now my brain is forgets everything. So yeah, this seems appropriate to me to consult someone who spends that much time training in that particular area and would know the dangers of some of these maneuvers.
I'm getting roasted in the comments. They said he testified today.
Oh, thanks, David.
Testified today. So I'm getting roasted in the comments for getting that wrong. I love our malcontents for calling us out because if we don't get it right, we are nothing. Jennifer, do you want me to play the punchline to your story?
Yes, please.
No pun intended. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, do you want me to play the punchline to your story?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Herb Dean has called a stop to this contest at 52 seconds of round number 2, declaring the winner by knockout and new undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Francis the Predator Ngannou.
The winner and new heavyweight champion of the world. Francis, how does that feel?
Oh, Joe, I don't know if I can find a word, a vocabulary to express this, but it feels so amazing, bro. Even though I've been fighting winning fight, but I had this thing inside of me that I never released it. Since this was like a promise that I made to myself since when I was young, to be one day in the first stage and to prove the doubter and people that thought that I was beneath them, that, it wasn't my fault. And if ever I have an opportunity, I'll do something great and even better, even greater. And that's what I'm here for.
It's a great story, Jennifer, and thank you for bringing that to us. I love hearing stories of people that get opportunities, overcome impossible obstacles, and are self-made. There is always a degree in the self-made man or the self-made woman or the self-made they of an element of luck, of being at the right place at the right time, or somebody pulling the hand up, and he got that opportunity. But when you get that opportunity, you've got to run with it. And boy, did he run with it. And I saw another documentary because I did get curious. And he is really giving back to his home country and especially his home village.
Yeah, no, and if you look up, guys, if you're interested, there's some really great video because the fight aired in Cameroon in his hometown at 5:15 a.m. of just this whole crowd of people gathered to watch him. And they're so excited to watch him win. I mean, it's just like, it's really, I am not an emotional person, but it was actually pretty touching.
Once again, thank you so much for that. That was a nice, see, we've brought everybody up after that, and we're ready to go to our last story.
Okay.
Which is not quite a story. Jennifer, I'm always sincerely careful at going after local journalists because it closes doors, and I get that. Brandy Cruz has been cringeworthy and hair ripping out worthy for me ever since, quite frankly. I think that she had this incident back in the early days of CHOP when it was called Chaz that has given her a lot of unprocessed PTSD, and she's not channeling it in maybe the best ways. And not only do we have this video clip that we're going to play, which I'm going to unpack and what's just going to be in a 911 emergency old school malcontent rant, but she doubled down this afternoon on her Facebook page with a post of, in red and big white letters, how do you define, quote, patriot, unquote? And the comment section was as obnoxious as you can imagine. And so one has to wonder, when somebody calls themselves a journalist and they blow open dog whistles like that, what are they really after? And with that, I'm going to roll this clip.
It's time we have an honest conversation about some people who claim to be advocates for the homeless. People who show up to protest and try to stop homeless camps from being swept, or people who get the homeless hotel rooms only to stop paying for those rooms to make a point about housing for all. It's time that we just say what is true. Those people don't actually care about the homeless. They only care about pushing a political agenda and have no concern for the consequences their actions might have for those who they claim to care about so much. Why else would you fight to keep people at Seattle's Cal Anderson Park? A homeless camp where there were reported rapes, where a woman was murdered. Why would you fight to keep people in those conditions?
That's as far as I'm going to roll with that clip. She goes on for about another 2.5 minutes. I think you've gotten enough of a taste of that. One of the first things that jumped out at me is she uses phrases like those people, which is a dehumanizing statement and a dog whistle in itself. Brandy, I want to make it really clear. We here at Malcontent News, we covered 2 of those stories deeply. We covered the sweep at Cal Anderson, and we covered the Olympia Red Lion story. I want to make it very clear to you, nobody wants to live that way. Nobody is advocating for people to live that way. But Brandy, if you go back to our coverage where we interviewed a person that had recently gotten out of Cal Anderson Park and had found shelter for himself, he went on an epic 9-minute rant that people like you should watch. Because one of the things that he said as he looked into our camera was, because we have nowhere else to go. And what is really reprehensible where you bring up Cal Anderson Park is your own TV station, because we've quoted the number, identified that of the people swept out of Cal Anderson Park, less than 20 were even given temporary housing. Brandy, that's your own TV station. that released that information. So you're not even reading off of the playbook that you have on there. But they've got nowhere else to go. We covered the Red Lion story, Brandy. We covered it twice. We covered it on January 1, and then we covered it again on February 3rd. It's on our website, Malcontent News. You can find it either just doing a search, Olympia Red Lion, or going into the local section and scrolling until you get to February 3rd. We cover a lot of local stories, among them the unhomed. And in that story, we provided a unbiased, fair, and accurate assessment of the situation that happened in the Red Lion. Oh yes, Brandy, you are right. People that call themselves homeless advocates brought approximately 35 people into that Red Lion, only paid for the hotel for one day. You are 100% correct in that. But Brandy, in your screed yesterday, you left a lot of facts out. So I'm going to drop some information for you. Facts that once again are available in the actual journalism that we do. Fact number 1. Basically, every person who actually works with the unhomed roasted that action as not advocating for the unhomed. And I know right now that some of Brandy's followers, when they watch this, are going to go, ha, I got him. He just admitted she was right. But you know what, Brandy? You ignored the fact that SWAT teams went in and threw multiple flashbang grenades in enclosed hotel rooms. These are weapons that the Seattle Police Department doesn't even use in protests anymore. They threw them at people in hotel rooms in the Red Lion. And then the SWAT team tried to deny it. And you know who blew the cover on it? The journalists at the press conference who were there when the sweep was going on, and you weren't there, who hammered the press conference until the police went and admitted, yeah, we might have thrown some bang bangs in there. The other thing that you ignored, Brandy, in your story, in your screed, and finding the people to interview to go, you left out the fact that children, little children, were escorted at gunpoint out of the Red Lion Hotel by SWAT teams. How do we know it? Because the cameras caught it. Both the cameras of the independent media and the cameras of the real media that you allegedly represent. Yeah, I am fired up over your latest screed, because all your screed is blowing tired dog whistles of fear, and fear the homeless, and they're out to get you, and they're coming to get you. And you know something that you didn't offer up, Brandy? You didn't offer up one solution, but you threw lots of big bloody chunks of red meat to your audience for them to lap up like hungry dogs and nod their heads like Rush Limbaugh followers who used to be called ditto heads. Yes, the 160,000 followers that you have on Facebook. I'm not bringing up that number, but when you got to 160,000, you did. You were very proud of the number of followers you had, which to me says that you're just a clout chaser. You know, Brandy, it's time for you to stop pretending you're a journalist. You created the divide as a vehicle for people from opposing sides to come together and to discuss and maybe find common ground. You know what, Brandy? I found more common ground between a chud, a police officer, homeless advocates that you trashed out, and people that work in mutual aid than you have found in the last year, because they all agreed on the same thing. They agreed that the problem wasn't the unhomed people, the rapists and the murderers, and why would you want them to live this way, be afraid? They all agreed that the problem was the city of Seattle and city leadership and the homeless advocates that you actually advocated for that only provide temporary solutions, because there is a $1 billion with a B dollar a year gravy train, and woo, they don't want to give it up. The real reality is, if we coordinated that $1 billion in an effort, and we have the receipts to back it up, we would solve the unhomed problem in Seattle within 18 months. So if you're going to behave like Tucker Carlson or Janine Pirro of Fox News, then just embrace it. But then, if that's who you're going to be, then we have to apply the Tucker Carlson filter to you. And what's the Tucker Carlson filter again? That's right. Not a reasonable person would believe anything you have to say. I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments.
I'm just going to say this. She's not a journalist. She's not objective. She sits on a chair in front of a fucking American flag and plays devil's advocate so she can get followers and craft a little narrative that gets her even more followers. When people do things like journalism, history, sociology, and they want to actually put forth a narrative that is nuanced, they do it objectively. They interrogate multiple sources. They interrogate multiple documents. They go through archives. They conduct interviews. They craft a nuanced narrative and try to display a bigger picture with analysis. They recognize their own biases. She does none of that. She just sits in front of a fucking flag, moderately attractive white woman, playing devil's advocate, spewing hatred, and fawning over the fact that she's got so many followers on Facebook.
And throwing them red meat. And you know, one of the most obnoxious things on her Patriot question, the top answer, right? Because Facebook shows you the most relevant, because Facebook is geared to create outrage. And I have said, and I'll say it again here on the air, I can't wait to get off of this platform one day. And malcontents, we're getting a lot more popular on TikTok. And if we can kind of move the middle on TikTok, the plan is start to back off of this god-awful platform. And TikTok has its own problems, but we'll save that for another day. But one of the most prevalent answers, Jennifer, was loving your country no matter what. No, loving your country no matter how wrong it is. That's terrifying to me. That is terrifying to me. A patriot is not a person that loves their country no matter how wrong it is. A patriot is a person who stands up and goes, my country is wrong and I want to fix it. And I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to say no. Because to your point of what's happening on voter rights, where are these people that scream about their rights? Because one of the arguments that they make is, oh, but if they take away one right, they'll just keep taking them away until you don't have any rights at all. Oh, wait a minute. That's actually a load of bullshit, Jennifer. It's just if their rights are taken away. But if you take someone else's rights, I'm cool with that. But you know what? You know, and I know that they're wrong. They will continue to chip away at their rights.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I had a deep dislike of Brandy Cruz prior to joining Malcontent News. So I just want people to know my opinion of her has not been influenced in any way. It's always been rather low.
I think we've been knocked off the air on Facebook, probably from the ESPN video, which which just goes back to my point of I can't wait to get off of that godforsaken platform because because the mods and admins, Jennifer, you know the drill. There's probably a pop-up right now that says copyright claim, blah, blah, blah. We're going to submit a letter to them that goes represents fair use under fair use copyright law for editorial, news, and commentary. And Facebook will go, oops, we got it wrong. Sorry.
Man.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
At least they took us off the air towards the end of the show.
Yes.
And my rant was recorded. So
your rant was recorded.
With that, Jennifer, we're going to take a deep breath. And just a reminder for the people who are still watching us, ironically, on Twitter and Periscope. Tonight is the last night you can watch us on Twitter and Periscope. So you've got some choices you've got to make. You can watch us on Facebook. That's place number one that you can go. Although I won't necessarily encourage that at the moment, and nobody's hearing that on Facebook anyway. You can go ahead and watch us on Twitch, either at Malcontentment Tango or malcontentnews.tv. Or finally, you can watch us on YouTube at Malcontentment Tango. You can also find us there on Malcontent News. Jennifer, great show tonight. Thank you for the stories that you brought to us. Thank you once again to our malcontent. I have an angel over my shoulder here. Isn't that?
Yes, you do.
It's just, he's going to stay there. He's not, it's not just a one-time thing. It's just this. It brought me such joy when I opened the box, and words, there's just no words. And it just came at the perfect time. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We have amazing followers.
Yes.
And we will put him back up in his amazing place of honor there. He looks fantastic there, actually.
He does. He fits there very well.
He fits there perfectly. It was like he was made to be there. And it gives me the angel over the shoulder. Jennifer, thank you so much. We're going to do this again on Thursday.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter.